On today's episode of the Cryptoverse, I have a chat with Riccardo Spagni about... Oh, sorry, I can't tell you. It's private. Hang on one second, let me dig out my view key. Ah yes, we talked all about Monero. Hardware wallets are the only way to truly store your cryptocurrency securely. Ledger provide a range of devices to suit all budgets and preferences. Check out my review of the Ledger Nano S by clicking on the link in the video description below. Hi there guys, and welcome to the latest episode of the Cryptoverse, your regular dose of news and commentary on Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies and blockchains. I'm your host, Chris Coney. Today is Wednesday, the 12th of April, 2017. So let us do some announcements, market roundup. I've got a little treat today in terms of the chart reading. Stay tuned for that. And then we'll get right into the Riccardo segment with the chat I had for the news segment. So announcement number one is one of those favors that I have to ask of you. I really want to get Brendan Eich on the show. Because I really love the Brave browser and I really love this basic attention token thing that they're doing, and I've put out a few requests to their team and whatnot to get Brendan on the show, but so far I've not got any traction, so that's where I have to recruit you guys. So if you've got a Twitter account, can you please tweet Brendan Eich and say, will you go on Chris's show please? And then if he gets enough requests, that'll be the incentive to let him know that there is demand for that, and then perhaps that'll motivate him to come on. I've even sent him an email directly. He gave out his personal email address on a interview the other day, so I sent him an email directly. So still haven't heard back from that yet, but you know, I really do want to talk to this guy because I'm a big fan of what they're doing. So if you can help me out, and if you're interested in having him on the show, please tweet at him and encourage him. So announcement number two, yesterday's experimental video format didn't go that well, did it? Now look at this, more dislikes than likes. Number one, that's never happened before, I don't think, and 70 dislikes. I think that's more dislikes than I've ever had before. Now the question is, would it have been better if I had have recorded this white paper in my own voice, right? I need to know specifically what the problem is so that I can, correct it or take a different approach. Most people just didn't like the robot voice. I didn't think it sounded like a robot, to be honest. I used a British accent and I set the settings as best as I could, and I thought it was quite good, but that doesn't really matter if I think it's good. You guys have to think it's good as well. You have to listen to it. Now, I'm thinking there is a middle way here between, reading the whole white paper and recording it on the one end, which I said was hugely time consuming, and then using a robot, which is on the other end of the spectrum, right? Now, the middle way for me would be, say, to read the white paper in full myself and then share my notes and my highlights in a video, just like I do with the news, right? Now, I'm pretty sure that that approach would be much better received than this entirely, well, it's not entirely automated because it still takes a bit of work to pull this off. But I still think that would be received better than yesterday's episode. Let me know what you think. But hey, to try something new is to take a risk, and to take a risk is to risk failure. And I'm fine with that. I mean, if you bail on me because of one bum episode, we're probably not a good match for each other anyway. I'm looking for community members like someone on Twitter who goes by the name of Nunya Business, funny, who summed it up perfectly in response to yesterday's episode by saying, quote, experimentation drives innovation. This wasn't your only dog in the race, close quote. And you can find that tweet on my timeline if you're interested in reading it for yourself. And now let us move on to the market roundup courtesy of coinmarketcap.com. Now then, Litecoin. Here we are, down here. Litecoin not only continues to reign in fourth place by market cap, but it's also jumped 9.5% today, putting it up there at $9.93 a coin. Now that was after $73 million of trading volume. Now I read that Coinbase are about to add support for Litecoin, which might explain this price jump. And since Dash is down 3.9% today, it's opened up this $70 million gap in between Litecoin and Dash in terms of market cap. And you might want to check out Tone Vays' Twitter. He's predicting a massive drop in the price of Dash based on some technical analysis. I'm not going to comment on that. He's the expert in this area. Go check out his stuff. And also, looky here, down in 11th place, PivX up a whopping 36.1%. I'm now actually I'm in communication with PivX to arrange a time for them to come on the show and talk to us. So thank you to several listeners who I think went into the PivX Slack and made some noise. Well, it worked, put it that way, so thank you for that. Anyway, PivX is now $1.32 a coin at time of recording, and it sits in 11th place, like I said a moment ago. PivX is now tickling the top 10. How exciting. Well, not as exciting as if I actually owned some PivX, but there we go. I do not own any PivX at this time. And guess who's back? Virtual Coin reappears back in the top 20, and again, after only $168 of trading volume. What on earth is going on there? Let's just ignore it. All right, 2 more coins in the double-digit club today. We have BitConnect and Singular DTV. Now, we're going to have another category above the double-digit club for the truly insane moves, but for now, we'll just recognize BitConnect as having gained 43.2% and Singular DTV for having gained 31.3%. Now, Singular jumped up that amount on only $40,000 of trading volume, while BitConnect had $760,000 of trading volume. Now, Singular DTV is that decentralized TV and entertainment platform. We could reasonably call it a decentralized Netflix, but there are so many more components to it, so I highly recommend checking out their site. Their project looks pretty solid so far. Now, BitConnect, on the other hand, they're doing a currency play. I did spend some time on their site, but I wasn't able to find anything that differentiates it from all the other cryptocurrencies. They even have this Bitcoin logo in the background of their homepage graphics. I'm not sure why they've done that. And also on their, what is BitConnect page, they also boast a 120% return per year by earning interest on what I think is staked coins. The question is, where does that return come from? I hope it doesn't come from the issuance of new coins, because that would make it one hell of a hyperinflating currency. And how about a little treat today? Let's do a chart reading on Bitcoin versus the United States dollar. Just look at this beautiful channel that has formed recently. Absolutely delightful. And also look at how the 2 phases of a trend have manifested in this case. They're very subtle, very, very subtle. You see, phase 2 in each case is just 1 or 2 very small red candles, but that's enough of a retracement in my opinion. And also notice that as of the 6th of April, which is this big green candle here, we're out of no man's land, meaning back above both moving averages. That is the time to start looking for long trades, because the trend is now officially our friend again. And the next natural target is the previous high of $1,300, and we have Fibonacci support at 1180. Good times. So in the news segment today, I bring you a conversation I recorded yesterday with Riccardo Spagni from the Monero project. Now, Monero is a cryptocurrency with privacy features baked into its very DNA, right? Monero handles privacy very differently to, say, Dash, because privacy in Dash isn't actually baked into the transactions themselves. In Dash, sending a transaction privately is optional. In Monero, transactions are private by default, with the option to reveal them. Now, that's a huge difference, because when you make something optional, apathy kicks in, and the vast majority of people just won't do it, especially if they have to understand why and how to do it. That just creates a step of education, which adds an extra step of complexity. And if we're going for cryptocurrency adoption here, the more that can be done automatically for the user, the better. Right? The masses want a plug-and-play experience, which we are far from in the world of cryptocurrencies. So Riccardo and we talked about topics on both ends of the spectrum. He talked about some really deep technical stuff, and then I also asked him a couple of really simple questions that I didn't know the answers to. And he also told me all about his love for Ethereum. Not. So with that said, I'm delighted to present to you Riccardo Spagni. So today I'm with Riccardo Spagni from Monero. Riccardo, how are you doing today, matey?
Not too bad in yourself.
I'm doing excellent today, thanks, mate. So let me get your name right. It's Spagni, is that correct?
It's pronounced Spagni, but
Spagni. See,
honestly,
that's why I asked you.
I'll take anything over like, spongy and other mispronunciations I've heard in the past.
Well, that would be a gross mispronunciation. And actually, my impression of you is you're quite a good head, so I don't think you'd be triggered by that kind of thing. I think you strike me as the kind of guy that doesn't sweat the small stuff. I don't know.
Nah,
I'm not basing it on anything other than just what I've seen of you. So, I just thought I'd get that right. So, give me the pronunciation again. Spagni.
Spagni. So
Spagni, right.
the GN is kind of like the GN in lasagna. So, you just
Now
have to
that's
sort of
useful.
angle
That's
around
very
that.
useful. Okay. And do you prefer Rick or Ricardo?
Oh, whichever.
Whichever. Is it,
Rick is
you don't really
fine.
care. Why are we even spending any
I
time
don't
on
care.
this?
Yeah, I know.
Okay. Well, you're an extraordinary guest, so that's the first thing to say. So, mate, what can you tell us about the Monero project? What's new? What's cooking? Can you talk to us?
Um, well, I mean, it's a pretty big open source project, so there's always a bunch of things happening.
Hmm.
And I mean, there's stuff that I'm quite excited about. We recently released beta 2 of the Monero GUI,
Yeah, I saw that.
which is kind of exciting because that I think opens up ease of access to a lot of people.
Hmm.
There's a ton of stuff we're doing in the GUI that is going to take. I mean, it's going to take time. It's not the sort of thing that happens quickly, but there's stuff that we're focusing on, like accessibility. One thing we've realized or I realized at least over the past few years, is that there are a lot of wallets and cryptocurrency tools that are not built with accessibility in mind, and so you have people that might be, for example, they might have poor eyesight or be colorblind, or
Okay.
whatever it is. They might have to use a screen reader. And unless you are explicitly providing the APIs and SDKs and that sort of thing needed to plug into that stuff in your app, you're basically just like cutting a whole bunch of people dead and
Hmm.
saying, well, sorry, we don't really care about your ability to use this app. So
Right.
that's something that we're trying to focus on as well. And over and above that, just like, I mean, at the moment, it's still quite a complex thing to use, and we're just trying to make it as simple as possible for people to use, which is a bit of an arduous task.
Sure. You mentioned like building in the back-end technology for accessibility. I was going to ask you to define accessibility, but then you did. I mean, people who are partially sighted or whatever, right? And that's actually one of the
Yeah.
things that struck me about the Monero GUI when I first opened it. And I suspected you might be doing this on purpose, but never mind the technology, even the design, it has very contrasting colors. To me, from being a web development background and designing websites with when all of the accessibility tools came out, in the UK, there's like various standards like AA, AAA, and all that malarkey to see how compliant your
Yeah.
site was for screen readers and all this malarkey. So I'm more than familiar with this stuff. And even the choice of colors and that sort of contrasting text on backgrounds and that kind of thing. The Monero wallet immediately reminded me of those days when we had to be very careful about how far we could push the graphical end of website design because it might break it for screen readers and things like this. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm on board with that. And to be honest, it's easy for us who have normal sight, normal hearing, all the rest of it, to forget these folks, which is terrible because if my mission is cryptocurrency adoption, what's to say that these are just as valid people in the economy as everyone else, right?
Yeah.
They don't want to be caught from this. It's stupid.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, I was reading a guide that Microsoft published, of all people,
Hmm.
on accessibility, and something interesting they pointed out is that it's very easy for us to think that, as system designers, for us to fall into the trap of thinking, of permanent disabilities as being the thing that we're catering to. But what about temporary disabilities? What about, I've broken my wrist and so now I can only type with one hand. Or, I've injured my eye and so now I only have one eye and my depth perception is problematic. We're not even talking about permanent stuff, but we're talking about suddenly somebody is partially incapacitated, and is your software built in such a way that it's sort of adaptable and easy enough for them to use. So it's not even just about people with any sort of permanent disability. It's about the entire gamut of users and people of all sorts of backgrounds and on all sorts of systems using your software. And are you providing the tools for that?
Right. See, I don't think I've ever had this conversation before in the world of crypto. So this is a new one, and it's important. But I'm sort of almost ashamed now. This conversation's never been had, not by me anyway. That's took you to bring that up. So more power to you, mate. So let's move on.
I'm glad we're discussing it. I think it's important to discuss it.
I got the sense from the very beginning that there was, I don't know what to use a cliche, but there was something different about Monero, just in the spirit of how you approach everything. I've got a few specific things to ask you about on that. So this might be an obvious one, but would it be fair to say that Monero is a privacy-focused currency? Is that its sort of main USP, right? Is that fair?
Yeah, it's a privacy-enhancing project.
Okay, cool.
And its main focus right now is obviously on the currency and financial side.
Okay, so I watched your presentation at Coinbase, brilliant that. And I quite like those presentations at Coinbase because they go deep and you get some real smart people going really deep into various projects. One thing that popped out to me about that whole 1 hour presentation was you talked about something in Monero called a view key, right? So you talked about how privacy should be the default and then build in flexibility to be less private to comply with laws or regulation and so on. Can you talk about the view key thing, what that feature is and why it matters in the context of being private by default and then having the flexibility to be transparent when and if you need to?
Sure. I think the first thing is, default privacy is so important, and it's something that we keep seeing over and over again. The minute an important privacy enhancing feature becomes optional, people don't use it. And so, an example of that is do not track, which is a little flag that your browser can add to say that you don't want to be tracked. And if the browsers enable it by default, then great. It means that all of their users are basically saying to services like Google and Facebook that they don't want to be tracked across sites.
Right.
Track them on a site, no problem, but don't track them across sites. And without that flag, it's kind of like you're just opening yourself up to Facebook and Google and so on, knowing all of your browsing habits.
And where is that feature? Where is that setting normally? Buried in the menu somewhere?
Yeah, it's buried somewhere deep down. And, then it becomes this challenge of everyone must be educated on enabling do not track.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's just silly because, no one's going to do that.
Right.
And so we've learned through things like that and through looking at other cryptocurrencies as well that aren't private by default, that honestly, optional privacy or non-mandatory privacy is useless. You might as well not even bother.
Right.
And where it becomes really scary, of course, is when people use that cryptocurrency thinking that they're using it privately, but meanwhile they're not. Because privacy is some sort of optional thing buried in some menu item or requiring your processor to lock up for 20 minutes. That sort of thing just means that people simply won't use it at all, but they might think that they are. And so they'll go and do stuff that puts them at risk and then end up, getting bitten later on.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you go the other end of the spectrum and you say, okay, well, what's the other way to do it? Well, okay, everything's private by default. It's all ticked.
Okay.
That's fine. But now, what if you have an actual use case where you don't want to be private? So in the context of cryptocurrency, probably the best example to look at is a charity.
Okay.
A charity shouldn't actually be private because otherwise they can claim that they receive no donations, but meanwhile they have.
Right.
And that's obviously a big problem because, skimming off the top is already an issue with
Yeah, absolutely.
charity and nonprofit organizations. So you have to enable people or particular parties, whatever it is, to go and double check the claim
Hmm.
without giving them access to specific things like where is the money coming from, or what is the money being spent on. Those are things that can be revealed in other ways, but just at the very least being able to validate certain or validate incoming transactions, and verify them without being able to spend them. That's something that the view key provides. And that's a pretty important piece of functionality. We have additional functionality that we're playing around with to allow organizations or individuals to reveal more than just their incoming funds. So being able to, for example, let's say you've got an auditor and you want them to audit not only the amounts that you've received, but the amounts that you've spent. So you want to reveal what you've spent your money on and how much has been spent. Then we have ways of revealing that as well. There are a number of ways. You can, for example, give them a set of your key images and so on. But we sort of want to make it as simple as possible. And these are really the sort of things that need to be thought about, because obviously Monero as a technology and any sort of financial technology has more than just very simplistic use cases of I have my own money and I'm spending it. There are use cases that involve other parties and other individuals. And so how do you enable that without compromising the private keys required to spend the funds?
Hmm. Sure. So it sounds to me like it's like the perfect name. A view key is required in a privacy-focused currency because by default everything is hidden and private, and then you've got this special extra key which all it does is just allows the transaction to be inspected, not spent, not modified or anything like that. It's literally just as it
Yeah.
says, a view key.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that's cool. So thanks for that. That's one of my favorites actually. And I suppose without that, you may get accused of intentionally trying to encourage people to use it for not so legitimate things. Is that something you thought about as well? Because you don't want to be seen to be encouraging but ill use of a currency.
Yeah, that definitely is an aspect. One of the things that could come out or could happen as the result of the mere existence of a view key is that you could have a particular organization or country even, that or state that mandates that everyone there needs to hand over their view keys,
Hmm.
so that they can keep track of it or whatever.
Right.
Again, it's they're not able to spend the funds, but the fact that they can view them gives them as a state or a government or whatever or institution, gives them the peace of mind. And obviously, it's not a perfect solution because people can have multiple wallets, but at least it allows those that do want to comply to be able to comply easily without compromising their actual funds or without giving anyone the ability to take some of their funds as a haircut.
Yes. And it's really, this is a question of like, where do you draw the line when you're developing a product like this? You want to remain as apolitical as possible because you're building a technology product. You're not building a, what do you call it? A political product, I almost want to say.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So yeah, it's being aware of the world in which the technology exists without making the technologies, take a for or against stand against any particular way of governing a country, because that's a completely separate debate and an issue.
Yeah, it really is. And it's, as developers, we might have individual views on, on rules and regulations and forms of government and so on, but we certainly don't want to have those views imbued in the software that we write.
Hmm.
It's not our role, and it's not our prerogative, and it's not our responsibility. All we're doing is creating a set of tools, and like we want to create a set of tools that doesn't reject the current world, because that's also not feasible,
Right.
but it provides a path between what the world looks like now and what the world could look like in the future, and provides the full gamut of tooling around that, so that, however people want to interact with the software, they can.
Yeah, I do talk about that. I mean, that's a wise observation there, that this is not a digital switch from like old fiat currency system to new crypto. There is going to be this kind of mucky in-between stage where the two systems have to coexist for probably longer than we might imagine, until the old system eventually gets washed out completely, if ever. So building a product around the assumption that we're just going to one day, everyone's going to dump all of their the old financial system in its entirety and then become full crypto, and that's not the way these transitions work typically.
Yeah, typically they're bloody and messy and take a lot more time than we'd like.
Right, exactly. Now, are there any other like developments that in terms of cryptocurrency privacy that we may not have heard of? I'm asking you this because there are probably some kind of wacky innovations that no one's heard of yet, or that are in development, or some unsolved problems in crypto privacy that maybe you guys are working on, maybe other people are working on. Can you give us like a forward view of any sort of cool stuff that's being built, or any unsolved problems that are currently being worked on that would enable us to do some really cool stuff?
Sure. So some of the stuff that's cool that's being done, I mean, at quite a, I don't want to use the term basic, but at a sort of very ground level, are projects like Join Market that enable better privacy for Bitcoin today. Same goes for things like Samurai Wallet. These are projects that work today that are working on improving and enhancing user privacy. And I am exceptionally proud of the work that's being done with things like Samurai Wallets and Join Market. At the same time, there are challenges, like Join Markets had challenges when it comes to Sybil attacks. Some of these challenges are easier to solve than others, and some of them are maybe, I'm hesitant to say unsolvable, but they're difficult to solve, at least in the short term. But we'll see what happens. I mean, there are very, very smart minds working on it and on improving these projects. And at the very least, they provide a foundation and a sort of basis for pro-privacy enhancements to Bitcoin, and stuff can be built on top of that later on, as with Monero.
Yes.
Two other things that are quite interesting and quite exciting in the privacy space are firstly Tumblebit, which is it's like a layer 2 solution, so it's a little bit like Lightning, like the Lightning Network. And Tumblebit basically it allows extremely fast and private transactions on a layer 2 level. And Tumblebit's something that not only are people in the Bitcoin space interested in, but obviously in Monero we're interested in it as well. And we definitely want to, or hope to see, a future where Monero is able to interact not only with the Lightning Network, but with Tumblebit as well. And then beyond that, something that's also super exciting is Mimblewimble. And Mimblewimble has stronger privacy than Bitcoin. The privacy is not as strong as Monero's, but what Mimblewimble does have that's really interesting is it has massive scalability benefits over not only over something like Monero, but over something like Bitcoin. Okay. So there's a bit of there's sort of like a trade-off where you have weaker privacy than Monero, but much better scalability. And again, like not only are people in the Bitcoin world very excited about it, but as a project, Monero is very excited about what Mimblewimble's doing, and we definitely like to see a future where we have a Mimblewimble sidechain or something like that.
Right.
And the last thing I'd like to mention, which is kind of exciting, is something called ZK Stocks. And so for those who are familiar with the technology behind Zero Coin and Zero Cash in particular uses something called ZK Snarks. And ZK Stocks is the trustless version of that. So instead of it requiring a trusted setup, it doesn't. There are some performance implications with that in terms of the amount of space that it takes up and so on. But dropping the trusted setup out the loop is kind of exciting because it means that something like a ZK Stark based mixer, I'm using mixer very in the loosest possible sense. A ZK Stark based sidechain mixer almost could exist on Monero, where
Okay.
if you wanted to create a more absolute break between your transactions, you could run them in and out of this mixer sidechain over a period. So, let's say that we reset the sidechain once a month. You would be able to put funds into the sidechain at the beginning of the month and then draw them out slowly over time, over the period of that month. And because transaction amounts are already hidden in Monero, there would be no way to really figure out the metadata, any sort of metadata link between those incoming and outgoing transactions.
Right.
And it would just provide a sort of much firmer break between transactions than even exists currently. So those are very exciting things that we're looking at the moment.
Would that last one almost be like, I'm trying to think of a real world bridge for that. Say if I turn my British pounds into dollars, and then those dollars went all around the US economy for a month and then came back out again.
Yeah, I mean, imagine if you did that, and then instead of getting them all out at the same time, you sort of got them, you got little envelopes of cash delivered to your house
Right.
over the period of the month.
Okay.
And like all that anyone saw were like, you got a bunch of letters delivered every few days,
Right.
and no one knew what was inside the envelopes. Then there would be no real conclusion that could be drawn.
Right. Because it's kind of like
And
cash. It's whoever
yeah,
handled that money doesn't know what
yeah.
know. Right.
And
Okay.
the key thing there, the thing that breaks a lot of this metadata linkage, if you're moving in and out of a sidechain like that, is the fact that the transaction amounts are already hidden. And so no one can even say, oh, but you put 100 Monero in, and then you withdrew 20 Monero over, 5 periods. As far as anyone can tell, there was an unknown amount that went in, and then a bunch of unknown amounts that came out.
Right. But you could make sure that no like new coins were created, so there's still a fraud protection in there. So something was
Yeah,
spent. Yeah.
yeah,
And you don't know how much, but something was spent, but you can still figure out that it wasn't like the creation of a new coin, or it was still a valid transaction. Am I making sense there?
correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So you
Yeah,
can
so
still
that's to say, it's exactly what we do. I mean, what we do currently do with ring confidential transactions, and what Mimblewimble does with confidential transactions as well, is basically this commitment arithmetic that then is able to figure out, or it's able to allow us to validate and verify whether new coins are being created.
hmm
And one of the advantages there as well is that with something like ZK Stark, a ZK Stark based sidechain, because the sidechain only lives for a short period of time, for let's call it a month.
Okay.
If there's ever a suspicion or an observation that there appears to be more money coming out of the sidechain in a particular month than there is going in, that sidechain would immediately be suspended.
hmm
And we'd go like, okay, something's gone wrong here. Obviously, there's an implementation issue.
Right.
Whereas if you aren't dropping that sidechain or like regularly, then how would you validate it any other way? You can't like catch implementation issues any other way.
Sure. Okay. That sounds cool. Let's switch to a softer topic here. This is more of a philosophical question. The question is, why is privacy so important to you and the Monero developers? So I think the majority of people think that privacy is important, but it doesn't necessarily mean we all value privacy for the same reasons. So I'd love to hear like the underpinnings on why you guys value privacy so much.
Um, I think I mean, I can't talk for all the contributors. So there's well over 200 contributors. So, and they've all sort of worked on Monero for different reasons. From my perspective, the stuff that I value, or the reasons I value my privacy, are things like targeted crime. I don't really want somebody to know that I bought, I don't know, an expensive diamond ring for my wife, and now they
Right.
know that she's going to be wearing an expensive diamond ring.
hmm
Um, she has no expensive diamond rings, criminals. Stop listening. Um, but there's stuff like targeted crime, and over and above that, things like I can't stand advertisements being forced on me based on stuff I've bought.
Okay.
You know, like if I've bought something and then I want to go buy the accessory for it, it's because I'm going to go buy the accessory for it. I don't need to have a bunch of adverts shoved down my throat to say that, you know, like he has a competing product or whatever. And those are sort of like two of the big ones. And I guess the last one is just a general feeling of unease that people would know or could know my bank balance and you know, sort of like what I'm spending money on. I just you know, like I feel like that's something that I almost don't care if to some degree I almost don't care if law enforcement know, but the fact that like I can pay on a website using Bitcoin and you know that website can figure out how much I've got in my wallet, that's not so great. That sort of just sits very uneasily with me. And honestly, like, you know, over in like even law enforcement, I would feel a great sense of unease if they were like be able to look at everything I'm doing, at least without coming and discussing it with me first, you know.
Right.
At least come knock on the door and be like, hey, buddy, we want to know what you spent 200 Rand on. And then I'll tell you.
Absolutely. So it sounds like to me that I could sum that up by saying you want to remove the temptation. So if I spend some money on Expedia and buy a flight with some Bitcoin, people might know that I'm going away on holiday and can come and burgle my house.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much stuff that gets leaked. I mean, like sometimes we think very much in the personal context, but think as well about a company that might have stuff like their business contact or business associates, their suppliers might be leaked. And, you know, like next minute it becomes problematic because those suppliers can get shut down or get like, you know, counter offers and all sorts of stuff. It's just really not ideal.
Right. So there's this I think that happens to, definitely happened to me. I can see it happening to a lot of people who come into crypto. There's this pendulum, right, where you discover Bitcoin and the openness of it. So openness as a concept, you go, oh, this is amazing. We're going to move into this open world with open software. Everything's going to be open. And then you go, okay, great for that application. And then you sort of look at the flip side of the openness and you go, well, like with the Bitcoin blockchain, what if businesses don't want all their competitors to know what their account balances are and so on? And then the pendulum starts to swing the other way and you go, oh, maybe we should have some privacy and some closedness. And you think, well, there's problems with that. And you swing back the other way. And we're constantly trying to find this balancing point between like convenience and security, openness versus closedness, and all this sort of stuff. So this is the ongoing evolution of the whole space, in my eyes.
Yeah, it's true. And I think that to a large degree, it's very, you know, it's very easy to pass judgment or to make a judgment call based on a set of circumstances. Like, would you want criminals to have the ability to buy weapons using a private cryptocurrency? Right. No, that's bad. Private cryptocurrencies must be bad. Okay. But, you know, would you want somebody in a war-torn environment where the government is oppressive? Would you not want them to be enabled to save up some money and get out of the country? You know, oh no, that's fine. No, then we want a private cryptocurrency. So it basically just comes down to a point where you're like, well, how about we don't like make any judgment or pass any judgment about what it should and shouldn't be used for, and we just accept that some people will use it for good and some people will use it for stuff that we find morally disagreeable, and so all we can do is just hope that the one outweighs the other.
I was going to say that, and actually that's the layer I put on top of that. And I say, look, honest question to everybody: what percentage of the population in the world do you think have a better moral compass rather than a worse one? So if you say criminals are going to use Bitcoin to buy drugs online or private currencies to buy weapons, what percentage of the world do you think are going to do that, right? Let's be incredibly mean and say it's 1% of the whole population. Well, if you added up the net benefit to the 99% of good people of using things like private currencies, on balance, if you zoomed out and looked at the whole world, the net benefit to humanity for those 99% completely trumps any possible negative effects that 1%, being generous, might use it to buy weapons and so on, right? That's just why it incenses me. It's a stupid argument.
No, it is. I totally agree. And it's it's sort of like trying to take a weird moral high ground without really having much of a reason to.
Right, but it boils down to the question of, well, what proportion of humanity do you think are good and bad? You must think that the vast majority of humanity are evil, and are therefore going to grab onto these private currencies, and 75% of the world's going to go nuts and buy weapons with them. That means you must think 75% of the world is immoral, right? That's
Yeah,
just
that's true.
I do not believe that.
That's true.
I think most people you meet are generally good people, just trying to live their lives, right? It's just that
Yeah, no, it's true.
the sensationalized news may, you know, bring those criminals to your attention more often than not. But the more people I meet, the more people I find generally are good people. So that's why I just don't buy that argument. Anyway, okay, let's move on here. I noticed something in the Monero wallet. It says you can change the privacy level of your transaction from like low to medium to high. But then it also says the higher the privacy, the higher the transaction fee. Can you tell me why that is?
Yeah, so basically with Monero, privacy comes at a cost. And so basically the higher the level of privacy, the larger the transaction is.
Okay.
Like physically larger. And since
Okay.
you are, I mean, with any cryptocurrency, and Monero is no exception, since you're effectively paying for permanent storage on thousands of computers around the world, that simply can't be free. You know, it has to be something that costs money. And so the larger the ring signature size, the larger the number of public keys that participate in it, and the larger the transaction, the more you're going to pay.
Okay. That makes so much sense. So yes, there's additional data generated by the higher levels of privacy. Takes up more disk space. Therefore, the transaction fee is higher to pay for that resource. That makes perfect sense to me. Cool. And it's specifically because Monero is doing some funky stuff that generates that additional data in order to give you the privacy.
Correct.
Cool. That's actually quite simple. Now you put it like that. Nice one. All right, a couple more questions then. This is I always like to look at guests' Twitter feed to see what they've been tweeting out. You tweeted out a link to the book Mastering Ethereum just with the word lol. What were you laughing at?
so like I like Andreas Antonopoulos. I think he's a good guy. I think he's done a lot of good for Bitcoin back in its early days, especially. The thing that the problem that I have with but where he's ended up professionally and as an individual as well is he seems to be on this pump ride where he sort of needs to pump stuff like Ethereum. I guess maybe because he's not getting enough Bitcoin paid speaking gigs or something. And this Mastering Ethereum book, it was just the culmination of it. Because he's like people talk about him like he's pro Bitcoin, and he's like, such a good voice for Bitcoin. He really is a benefit to the community. And that's all well and good, but when he's like writing a book about Ethereum, on the back end of that, it's not so great. And it's just, I guess it's frustrating more than anything else that somebody like that is generally speaking like good for the community has also ended up being like such a phenomenal waste of skin when it comes to educating the community about the risks that are inherent in something like Ethereum, which is just got this like massive attack surface and a whole bunch of like horribly aligned disincentives and so on and so forth. And it's sort of like, I look at that and I feel like it's as technical individuals, we've done a pretty poor job of educating people in the community at large about the risks of using cryptocurrency and how to identify cryptocurrencies and blockchain projects that are clearly unworkable. And so we've ended up, through honestly our own fault more than anything, we've ended up with a bunch of projects that are they're silly almost, and they're like impossible, but they're getting a bunch of VC thrown at them because, they have the word blockchain in the title.
Okay, so from that, I take it you're not a fan of Ethereum.
You could say that.
I honestly wasn't aware of that. I didn't know you had that stance. Now, I've actually the biggest criticism I've ever given to Ethereum is the exact words that you just said: massive attack surface, and the benefit of Bitcoin having just this very scarce set of opcodes. And actually, I talk about all the time why Andreas put the leafcutter ant on the front of his book, Mastering Bitcoin, was because they are very simple organisms, but when you put them together, they exhibit this complex behavior, almost like Bitcoin opcodes, which look super simple, but give them to a human being and they put them together in these wildly creative combinations to create these wildly innovative services and technologies. And I suppose that's where Ethereum and Bitcoin are at two ends of the scale. Very, I call Ethereum intelligent, if you like. It's got a big vocabulary. And then on the other end, you've got Bitcoin with this very simple vocabulary, which requires more creativity, I'd argue, right? I didn't know you had that stance on Ethereum. Fair enough. Cool.
Yeah, it's I mean, I've it's super difficult because a lot of people go, oh, you just hate them because Ethereum's a competitor. It's, which is a silly argument to have because it's it's not well, I mean, firstly, it's not a competitor. Ethereum's the magical project that can do everything in the world, but just do it badly. And Monero is a sort of project that's slightly differently focused. And I don't like I'm in this weird position where I have enough technical expertise to be able to criticize other projects and also praise other projects because there are some really interesting projects that are doing cool things like Saya. And
cloud storage.
yeah, yeah. And I think David Vorick has got a really good head on his shoulders. And I think he's a smart cookie, and I think he knows what he's doing. And I think he's built Saya in a way that makes a lot of sense, and that is it's sort of done in a reasonably safe and sane way. And so I'm not critical of every single project that comes out or every single project that exists. But I definitely am critical of projects that I can immediately see are unworkable, or projects that might have a good idea but are just they're doing things that are almost overtly scammy. And I think that it's important as a technical person who's in this space, who struggles on an ongoing basis to try and keep my nose clean, keep Monero's nose clean. I think it's so important to call out other projects and be critical of them where there is a need to be critical. And I wish that more people did it.
Right, absolutely. So interesting. The idea that a criticism of Ethereum automatically means you are, anti-Ethereum. That's daft, because you could be the biggest Ethereum fan in the world, but you must reserve the right to criticize them if they do something stupid, right? You can't just be like this undying loyal fan that's blind to something harmful, right? This is just what being a balanced human being is like. And it's actually one of the things I admire about you. I don't mean to flatter you, but this is just one of the impressions I've got from watching all your stuff, is you seem to have a reasonably level head about you, and you're not overtly emotionally attached to Monero or any given technology. You've got this higher level of awareness that allows you to see things for what they are, which is just my observation. Whether it's true or not remains to be seen. That's just my perception of you. Is all.
Well, you know what it is. I mean, it's like I guess part of it is that I've come up with ideas that I thought are brilliant, only to have them smacked down as being stupid. And I'm really grateful that the people that smacked them down and told me that that's a bad idea and isn't workable because of X, I'm really glad they did that, because if I went the other route and sort of barreled along ahead and had people telling me that I'm the cleverest little boy and the most precious snowflake on the planet, I would have launched a whole bunch of really stupid, really scammy things.
Right.
So the fact that other people have called me out on bad ideas is excellent. And even now, I mean, there's stuff that I've been bound to for years, and if somebody comes along and they can challenge my viewpoint, I will change my point of view
Hmm.
gladly. Just, give me a real challenge. Don't just let me try and figure it out any other way, because it's not going to happen.
Right. Wallow around in
Um,
delusion. Yeah.
like yeah, exactly. Like, ask me the hard questions, make me defend my position, and when I'm done defending it, then like either you realize that I have a point, or I've realized that I don't. It's the
Hmm.
only two possible outcomes.
Absolutely. I could boil that down to this. If you and I went out to dinner, I think you and I would be able to tell each other we had sauce on our face without being upset about it, and also thanking each other for it. Right? That's kind of
Yeah,
how I would boil it. Only your friends will tell you. That's the way I put it. And I think, Chris, you've got sauce on your face. Rather than let me walk out of the restaurant because you didn't tell me, and then everyone looks at my
yeah,
face, right? That's a metaphor, but it's
yeah,
a metaphor of what we're talking about. And
yeah,
that, to me, I can trust those people because they won't just allow me to walk off the cliff, if they saw me doing it,
yeah.
you know.
And I think coupled with that as well is I've seen a lot of discussion, especially now over the past couple of days, about niceness and politeness,
Hmm.
and how, you know, how as people who are involved in technical projects, we should all be nice to each other, which is of course great in theory. The problem with that argument is that where it falls flat is when you start, because you start off being nice, and you're like, oh hey, that thing you're trying to do won't work because of X.
Hmm.
And then the person sort of listens, and then maybe they affect a small change. But after you've like explained to them for the 13th time why layering complexity on their bad idea does not make it a less bad idea, you eventually just get tired of it, and you start getting, I guess, more aggressive.
It's the natural consequence of your patience wearing out, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And it's sad, but it's what happens. And I think that, like, I'm not the only one, or I'm definitely not the only one, but a lot of people a lot of technical people in the cryptocurrency space that might be viewed as mean, are not mean just because we don't like other people, or we want other projects to fail, or any such nonsense. We're mean because we're frustrated that the people who are technical, that we've been trying to talk to, and try and explain why their ideas, this won't work or that won't work, the fact that they continue to just ignore that and barrel ahead with a clearly broken idea is frustrating. There's just no other way to cut it.
Gotcha. All right, last question. This is the magic wand question, which I've started to ask all guests. If you had a magic wand and you could just wave it and solve one problem in the world of Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, and blockchains, what would you do?
Um, that's easy. I would use my magic wand to give everyone in the community, and newcomers and new adopters, the ability to have an understanding of the complexities that are involved, and to identify bad ideas and brokenness and scams, intentional or otherwise. Just give
Okay.
them that understanding. Give them the collective um, technical brain of all
Right.
the people working on
And then the and
Bitcoin
then
and
the critical
Monero for a
thinking
day.
skills as well. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
exactly.
knowledge and critical thinking, so we could have intellectual debates that were not just based on perception but actual knowledge. Yeah, I think that's quite a
Exactly.
good one. All right. So, is there anything else you'd like to talk about before we close?
No, that's about it. Thank you very much for having me. I think we could have gone on for like another hour quite
I know
easily.
I was watching the clock like a hawk. So, where can people find out about, where can people find more about Monero? Follow the project. Follow you. Can you give out all those kinds of things?
Sure. So there's getmonero.org, which is the website. There's also the Monero subreddit and the Monero Stack Exchange, so monero.stackexchange.com or .org, whatever it is. And over and above that, if they want to like follow my trolling on a daily basis, then they can follow me on Twitter. I'm Fluffy Pony ZA.
Which is where I found that tweet. So plenty more to come, I'm sure.
Exactly.
Right. I'd love to have you on back in the future sometime, mate. So I'll send you an invite when after we've had a gap, and then see if you're available.
Cool, definitely. Thank you very much for having me.
All right, mate. See you soon.
Cheers.
So thanks for joining me today, guys. If you liked this episode, hit the like button. If you disliked it, hit the dislike button. Please leave me a comment below with some feedback and get subscribed. And please support the Cryptoverse and boost cryptocurrency adoption by going to cryptoversity.com/podcast and becoming a patron. From just a few dollars a month, you can secure Cryptoversity's future, get unlimited access to all Cryptoversity courses, and access a private patrons-only chat group where you get direct access to me. That is all for today, guys. I'll be back tomorrow with another episode of the Cryptoverse. So until then, it's me, Chris Coney, saying bye for now.